the name of the values that keep you alive, do not let your vision of man be distorted by the ugly, the cowardly, the mindless, and those who have never achieved his title. Do not lose your knowledge that man's proper estate is an upright posture, an intransigent mind, and a step that travels on limited roads. Do not let your fire go out. Spark might replace the spark, and the hopeless swamps of the approximate, the not quite, the not yet, the not at all. The world you desired can be won. It exists. It is real. It is possible. It's yours.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Crypto Economy Podcast. Today we have two representatives from Constellation Network, both named Ben, so I introduced both the Bens to you. Thanks
Great
for
to
being
meet you
on,
guys. Very nice to be here.
So if we could get started by maybe having you both just introduce yourselves and what you do at Constellation, and then maybe we can dive into sort of a brief overview of what Constellation is and why you guys wanted to make it into something.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start, and then I'll pass it over to Ben, and he can introduce himself and maybe talk a little bit about the overview of our company, since he's played probably the biggest role in putting together our, branding and our messaging. So my name is Benjamin Diggles. I am a co-founder and the VP of Business Development, and my role is really predicated around managing enterprise engagements, government engagements, ambassadors, general partnerships, academia, and so forth. So prior to this, I was with Oracle. I've been in big data for the last 10 years, enterprise, but I've been in technology for 20 years, and really appreciate you having us.
Yeah,
Great.
great. Thanks, Mark. My name is Ben Jorgensen. I'm the CEO and co-founder. I guess that kind of makes it necessary if you're starting a startup and you're the CEO, you got to be a co-founder. Else it's just awkward for everybody. And really kind of in charge of all the strategy, the vision, painting a framework that gravitates towards a community, as well as business leaders and executives and investors. So kind of merging multiple narratives and being able to interweave different narratives to appeal to different people. And my background, very briefly, the way I actually got introduced to blockchain was not through cryptocurrency. It was working with a group called Singularity University out of Palo Alto. And I worked for a group called Exponential Organizations, which was a book by Salim Ismail that wrote about how disruptive technologies would attack the immune system of Fortune 500 companies. And it's a really powerful story. And in that story, blockchain became one of the kind of staples of those emerging platforms that would disrupt modern day business. And in living in San Francisco, I sought out for the next big thing. I had already built several startups in my past, sold a few. I actually have an upscale restaurant called Gozu in San Francisco, where I work with an incredible chef. And what I'm always looking for is the next big thing that can really change people's perception of the world. And that's really kind of why I got involved in Constellations, because this is one of the most incredible teams I've been able to work with in my entire career.
That is one thing I love about the industry is you really find some very forward-thinking people and people who are willing to think outside the box that you wouldn't really find in a lot of other places. They kind of pop their heads up and you meet some super interesting people. So what is it that you guys are doing? What was that vision that you tried to encapsulate with Constellation?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that we like to say is that we look at this world, this data economy world that we live in. Nearly 80% of the world's data has been created in the last 3 years, and the infrastructure to support the data that's coming off of consumer apps like Twitter and Instagram and events, event-based messaging. There's so much data in the world, not to mention all the devices and your thermostat telling telling your phone when to turn off. There's so much data going around the world. And what we see are these massive threat vectors that are occurring because data is siloed and centralized to massive server farms or to certain clouds that are dedicated to individual companies. And we also see data breaches occurring because of these centralized personal data breaches occurring because of these centralized data hubs. And so Constellation is really, we set out to build a network of data governed by a community. And what we believe is that data, everybody's data should be owned individually. You should be able to tell a certain company that they can use your data and your rights and let go of certain privacy and get monetized for that. And we need to have a new accounting system in place, a new auditing system in place. And the only way to do that, that we believe, is a decentralized ecosystem. And so
So,
today, go ahead.
so a lot of people, have sort of sold the cloud as this decentralized ecosystem. What do you think about sort of the big push to cloud in the recent years?
Well, I think that's a step, right? That's certainly a step that you're going away from hardware uh, focused farms that are or server farms that are dedicated to individual companies, but you still have a very centralized situation. If you're working with AWS's cloud, the police and the SEC or anybody could go in and shut down AWS, and they would shut down their cloud. So it's still centralized, but it's less, right? We're moving towards that. It's a step in the right direction.
Yep, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think it is interesting that all of a sudden, we went from sort of a decentralized solution where most people were storing their files, on their individual laptops and they were their own little
Yep.
nodes to a point where my entire desktop is backed up to iCloud now, and there's just one single point of entry for, a government or whoever else who gets a request to hand it off.
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in on that too. I mean, it's, the centralization, decentralization, I guess, debate is one side of it. And there's a lot of ways that data, even in the cloud, hybrid clouds, multiple clouds, is decentralized. I mean, that was really the purpose of a content delivery network, was to speed up the ability to deliver some of these assets in parts of the world where they're being queried. And the issue, though, is that as more data, to Ben's point, bulk data collection, I kind of scoff at the whole sentence around 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 3 years. Yes, that's somewhat true, but also the ability to collect data has been increased. So the data has kind of always been there. Now, you'd like, to his point, your thermostat's collecting stuff. And the big opportunity here is really around speed. And what I mean by that is there's new opportunities when it comes to things like an autonomous network, if you will, that require processing to happen at the edge. And it just negates the promise of a cloud. You can't have cars orchestrating on a decentralized network and communicating while they're sending data up back and forth to these, large cloud providers. It's just simply not fast enough. Even if you start bringing in 5G and some of these other, over the air, I guess freeways, if you will, of data, the demand for some of these new emerging technologies and the traditional cloud just aren't matching up.
So that being said, do you believe that it will ultimately be faster than the current system? Because I know that's probably been sort of a critique is, sharding the data or decentralizing it, you're going to run into some problems with the speed. But do you guys think you've sort of cracked the code on that?
I think we're heading in the right direction to crack the code. It's going to take a lot. Um, it's going to take a lot of a lot more parties getting involved in decentralization. And yes, I do think eventually it will be. It has to, right? I mean, you think about this autonomous everything and these smart cities that are supposed to incorporate new data to learn and be more efficient. The only way you can be more efficient is to be faster at processing, right? And Google's making huge strides with quantum computing, but for that to really reach commercial viability, we're still a decade away. But all these things are in stride to figure out high computation at the edge to have that vision of AI and artificial intelligence that we see kind of regulating our world and making it more efficient, right?
This is going to be a little bit of an aside, but I was just curious, what do you think the implications are of sort of Google's quantum computing capabilities? Do you think it's going to be troublesome to blockchains? Is that something that, as you're building one, you're sort of keeping in the back of your mind, or do you think it's just sort of going to speed up the process of mining blocks and make the network more efficient ultimately?
Man, that's a great question. As
I have
you
an
know,
opinion.
yeah, I mean, please, I'll say that my focus on the quantum computing has been more about how does that impact like trading on the Nasdaq and financial markets and capital markets, and I think it's going to have a
Yeah.
crazy impact on how we perceive capital markets and who has access to it, which could change the whole landscape of where money flows. But I'll digress on the blockchain side to Benjamin Diggles.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that Google is always going to do things that are self-serving. I mean, no matter what guise they put it under, they're trying to like bridge ecosystems. It's to me, it's always going to be self-serving, and that is largely contradictory to the ethos of what birthed the blockchain movement. I constantly am saying that decentralization forces collaboration. And as you know, with the way that Google acquires through mergers and acquisitions of building kind of this monolithic powerhouse, they're not looking to like open up and really play nice with others unless it serves their agenda. And so I believe that the decentralization, if they're able to, pipe into that quantum computing and use it for, some of the processing capabilities or whatnot within that ecosystem play, great. However, I think that they're largely threatened right now because companies are collaborating in a way that have never been done before because an autonomous network means that no one owns the data. So governance really is, to me, the future of all of this. That's what's going to allow these autonomous networks to exist. Where quantum computing, to me, is going to be, I hate to almost say it, it's going to be a commodity like any kind of processing power. But if it's isolated within somebody's walled garden and they're not open to collaborating within the ways that blockchain currently is kind of approaching the market, then I think that they're going to be in for a rude awakening.
Absolutely. So that being said, how is Constellation helping sort of permission that data in the way that Google cannot or is not doing?
Yeah, well, I would say that Constellation, very high level, Constellation is a base layer protocol and networks governed by users, and we're creating a standard for adding security to data transportation. And I think that's really powerful. We're creating a secure communications protocol that's an alternative standard to TCP. And I think a lot of people say that, but we're working very closely with the United States Air Force to see a realized vision around alternative standards to what's out there. And so what the message here is that the government doesn't really want to give all the control to the big tech companies right now. They want to look at innovative solutions that they can nurture in-house and bring to the market and use within their walls, and then allow uh, you know civilians to use as well, because innovation is not happening within major tech companies. That's antithetical to the big tech companies. Um, and so, what Constellation is really focused on is providing an infrastructure that gives back that control to people. As I said, earlier about giving back people's data, letting data run more freely and be audited by a global network of users is very different than one tech company. And you can imagine that that's a huge undertaking. And when you go through that undertaking, you have to rethink the infrastructure that's out there. Existing blockchain technologies are not equipped to handle data streams and the massive amounts of data. The architecture is not there. So what Constellation has done is we've rethought the architecture to accommodate big data, and we've created a way for any developer to pull an API and be able to add security to data and tap into predetermined algorithms that organize a network state. And that's pretty powerful because in order to power a global network of users, you need to use algorithms to decide where that data goes, how it's organized, um, so that it can infinitely scale. And that's a lot of what Constellation's doing, which is a very huge undertaking, but something that's been demanded by both public sector and crypto communities alike that want to see something that's scalable, that can actually work in a production ready environment.
So you mentioned that governments are sort of rooting for decentralization. As soon as you said that, I sort of thought of the CIA's like no bid contracts to get their data uploaded on AWS servers. It was like had to be within 30 miles of another server farm, and like Microsoft's were like 28 miles and like stuff like
Right.
that. So was the Air Force specifically, you think, just more forward thinking? Did you guys approach them? Like how did you sort of decide which branch of the government to partner with? And do you think certain branches are thinking about this differently?
Well, I'll jump in there, and then Diggles, I know, has a thought on this, but um, really the first thing that I mean, data strategies are changing rapidly right now. And the first thing we go in and ask people is, what's your data strategy? So what your data strategy was 3 years ago, when when data management solutions were just hitting the public market, has drastically changed. The Air Force is the largest, the most funded group in the Department of Defense. And they are very innovative in that sense. And they want to be seen as easy to work with and innovative. And the approach that they took years ago was to silo data. The last decade, from 2010 to 2020, was an absolutely amazing decade of transformation in the digital constructs, from the launch, from the IPO of Facebook, all the way to questioning of Facebook on the utility of their data has been a massive transformation that's occurred. So you can imagine that any entity, especially the government, is starting to rethink what their data strategy is. How do they collect data? How do they sell data? How do they give permission data to make smarter systems? And so where data was once siloed and that was seen as the appropriate data strategy, there is now a new vision to create an ecosystem that's interoperable with their data, and to actually de-silo the data that they have once, because they need to create smarter systems and they need to create more rapid decision making on the fly, whether that's in training simulations or actually in the field.
So that being said, they're obviously looking at a variety of types of data. So how did you guys sort of approach the specific industries and use cases that you thought the platform would be best for? I know on the website you talk about sort of IoT and sort of automotive vehicles and use cases. So could you maybe walk the audience through a couple of, good use cases for the technology and why you chose to enter with those?
Yeah, maybe I can take this one. Specific to the government, I just want to add one thing to what Ben was saying about the government. Having wrote the contract and secured the contract with the Air Force, what I've learned over the last year is that the U.S. Department of Defense is moving upwards of 3 to 4 times faster than the public sector. The private sector, which is pretty baffling. And I think it's really predicated on what Ben just mentioned around a data strategy. We could sit down with a really mature company, and I'm not going to name names, but they would surprise you. And you can ask them what their data strategy is, and they're like deer in headlights. And they all look at data as IP and revenue opportunities. I mean, competitive edging and all this type of stuff that they use data for in really the commercial aspect. But the government, they look at it as, to Ben's earlier point, threat vectors. They look at it as confidence issues, maintenance issues. It's like they have all this data. The U.S. Air Force is creating upwards of 2,000 terabytes of data every 60 seconds. And so for them to have any way of managing that, that's the number one focus for them. As everyone knows, information wins wars, and information is data. And so all this data being siloed is a real problem when they have to, get it to come together and coalesce so they can make quick decisions against an adversary. And so when we came in, we weren't coming at them saying, hey, we can really unlock the power of your IoT data or your AI data we were saying, hey, what systems require a high level of confidence of data that's streaming into them within close to real time, that requires a lot of data to make sense of whatever the algorithm or the output should be, and that typically is around mobility, IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning, typically all the big buzzwords around how to manage these big data initiatives. So we got in bed with them on a thing called multi-domain command and control, which is just a kind of a complex way of saying siloed data sets that need to interoperate. So we're very foundational. In fact, we don't really get too involved on the application layer. We're really around prepping that data so then it could be used freely with high confidence in those scenarios. So I apologize, but did that answer your question? I want to make sure that I got your question answered.
Yeah, no, I think that answered, I think definitely the first part, but I think maybe just to finish it off, if you had a few maybe more consumer facing use cases for people, sort of like cars and IoT devices, where maybe walk them through how that process might look to an actual person.
I'll jump in there. I think one great perspective is that our application layer is actually developer tools, and our developer tools are compatible with existing data management tools. So existing data management tools would be anything from like working with Red Hat to Cloudera to Databricks, all the way down to the open source level of like Storm by Apache and Kafka. And so our technology actually is appended within that stack. So we wanted to be compatible to existing infrastructure for true scalability. So when we talk about use cases, we're talking about what are the data pipelines? Where is data created and how is it streaming, or where is it being collected and how is it in transit, right? So one example that we like to talk through is looking at how, say, the city of Chicago, the CTO of the city of Chicago is looking at all these different data feeds coming in, traffic lights, smart buildings, um, billboards, everything. They have a giant dashboard look at how the city is looking, where the data is coming from. And so they're creating this distributed database, and they're using something like a MongoDB to power and connect all these distributed databases to provide a single view perspective of all the different data out there. So Constellation, a developer and data engineer, would actually append our technology to these different databases that are connecting and exchanging information to provide that view. And where Constellation comes in is we add security across these various databases as they trade data. And so the use case that I like to say is not just about the opportunity to create interoperability and connected ecosystems and IoT, but to connect those data feeds or connect the data that's being transported from a device to the cloud or from a device to another device, because we see that there is a massive opportunity for security hacking in the way of spoofing those data feeds. And if you can alter some of those data feeds, you could actually cause not just a data breach, but something that has an economic catastrophe that occurs over 5 to 10 years that's nearly impossible to detect. And so what Constellation is doing is adding cybersecurity to big data.
Got you. That makes sense. So how did you manage to create a token that sort of interoperates with the system that you've built? What are the incentive structures, and what is the sort of use case for the actual token that you put out?
Yeah, great question. So where do we begin? We created an ERC20 token in 2018, and we distributed that out, and we used that as kind of a quantifiable beacon on user adoption of Constellation. What I mean by that is, does the community see a future in this? And today we have a very strong trading volume. And we have a very passionate community, and so we feel very confident in who we are, and that there is a desire by this open source community that we've built to use what we've done. So I like to set that forth. What you're asking is about creating the token. and how do we use that on the platform? Well, the token's used for a couple different components. Sorry about that. A couple different components. The first component is that the token is used to secure throughput on the network. So basically, if you're an enterprise client and you want to add cybersecurity to one of your data streams and a certain subset of that data you passionately want secured, you would use DAG, our cryptocurrency, to secure that data feed on our network. And so what then would pay the validators or our node operators on our network for securing that throughput. And so our business model that we kind of see going forward are twofold. The first is that when we talk to enterprise clients, they often talk about using our network, and they're not actively going to go to an exchange and purchase cryptocurrency. So we act as that custodian that will take USD and convert that into DAG and purchase throughput on the network to secure that data feed. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
So that's the first angle. The second angle is that we envision this entire network being powered by validated data feed. So taking my example of, let's say, Fortune 500 company Acme that secured that data feed, they could then in turn sell that data feed, that validated data feed across the Constellation network to other actors. So let's say the Acme Co. 2 is on this data exchange or this network. They could actually purchase that validated data feed. They know that it's been validated by a global network of users, and they could take that validated data feed of, say, weather data and append that to existing artificial intelligence or machine learning that's maybe powering a smart city, and they want to make it smarter. So they would take that validated data feed, they would purchase it on the Constellation network, and they would plug that into their AI to make it smarter and more efficient. So those are the two components of Constellation.
And who exactly are the node validators, and how are they incentivized to participate?
Great question. So right now we're in the process of onboarding 100 different foundational nodes that will serve as the foundation of the network. And these are 100 different node groups. They're companies, they are individuals that are passionate about the technology, and they are representing over 92 different countries. And so that's the first wave. Over the next couple of years, we'll be onboarding thousands of nodes that represents that global state and global network, if you will.
So, final question on the tokens. What was your sort of general tokenomics model? And I think you sort of went into this a bit, but why did you choose things like a capped supply? And more specifically, why did you choose to burn tokens?
Well, we didn't. In the early days, we decided to burn the tokens. We don't really say burn tokens, but what we did, we burnt some tokens on the founder side. So we thought that it looked better to the community to show that our support and our interest is aligned with the entire community, that we were here not purely for financial gain, but actually because we wanted to build out a vision. And we thought it was necessary to remove that kind of uncertainty and doubt that might sit on Constellation by people seeing that there's a large batch of tokens dedicated to founders. So we actually got rid of a lot of tokens there. And
That's
as we
pretty
kind
honorable.
of go ahead.
That's pretty honorable. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it kind of reinforces this idea of decentralization, and what Constellation wants to do at the end of the day is create a network that's controlled by the community. And the way to do that, you can't create this uncertainty of whether these founders have too many holdings, or if they're going to sell them, or how are they going to use them. You create that slight bit of doubt in your mind. And we thought that we wanted to align with everybody and show who we were. And what that did was it created so much more trust in who we are as people and our ethos and our passion that people feel like equals to us and in our community, and that's what we wanted to, and that's what we wanted to express, because we're constantly learning, and our community is here to help this giant vision scale. And so anything that impedes the possibility of not scaling could be really detrimental to an open source community and this giant vision that we have of data governed by an entire global network. And so and then your other question was about a capped supply. So we wanted there to be a fixed supply so that there wasn't the possibility. We wanted to take a different take on cryptocurrency, much like Ethereum had done, and move away from kind of the mining possibilities. But I'll let you in a little secret of something that we are exploring when it comes to validator rewards and distributing rewards. We're actually looking at a way to align validator rewards with market sentiment in a dynamic way. And this is something that hasn't been done out there. And I think it's going to create a new standard on how blockchain economies and crypto economies distribute out mining rewards or validator rewards. And the way that we're going to start to release that over the next couple months. And but really what it is to align individuals with the market sentiment and trading activities of our cryptocurrency alongside those that are mining our cryptocurrency. And I know I'm being very vague, but I want to keep that kind of the creative juices flowing there. And the ultimate goal is that we think that some of these economies, these crypto economies and the mining economies, aren't really aligned with everybody's sentiment. Those that are buying exchanges, trading on exchanges, to those that are receiving rewards for across these networks. And we want to create an economy that creates a dialogue with each other. And so we are constantly thinking, how do we gamify this entire process of mining and node validators that changes the landscape of how cryptocurrency is mined and distributed, while also tapping into the things that make communities super powerful, which is the sentiment, the conversation, the educational channels. And we're already doing that from like a humanistic level. In Constellation's community, we've got the Stardust Collective, which is a group of 35 people chosen from the community and self-organized that help create educational materials and educational materials on who we are, what our partnerships mean. They will ultimately be individuals that get to decide which projects get funded in Constellation. And then we have a governance group, which is 25 individuals that are responsible for the rules and regulations and values that make up what Constellation is. So from a humanistic level, we've already started to put these pieces in place. And what will come over the next few months is a programmatic approach to aligning those incentives and values as well as we give out validator rewards. Sorry,
Gotcha.
that was a lot.
No, that was perfect. That was great. So who are the other sort of main players in your space? Who are your main competitors? And what do you guys think about the strategy that they're taking?
Well, I'll take a shot at this. I got to say that the competitors, I actually like to collaborate with a few, and I'm very, very selective on who I've wanted to collaborate in the blockchain space, because I don't see a lot of people taking on this challenge to be compatible solutions with existing centralized technologies. And what I mean by that is that most of blockchain today, over the first two generations, blockchain, Ethereum, have created isolated sandbox test environments of the technology that are not easily integrated into existing technology stacks or real world environments. So what you have are production deployments, but they're kind of their own ecosystem, and they're separate. Like you could almost say they're a separate P&L from the actual company. I mean, that's how like separate they are. And so when I look at people that are building out solutions that are compatible to real world data and technologies, I see Chainlink But we formed a partnership there. I do see that they're doing some amazing things, being able to plug off-chain data into a smart contract, which I think is a great leap forward. It still doesn't address the scalability and veracity of data. And then, I look at people like Quant, who we also formed a partnership as doing some interesting things around creating this operating system that across different blockchains that people should be able to choose different chains for different use cases and be able to turn off and on a switch between those. And I think that's an amazing play for people that are just starting to get educated on what a smart contract is. What is big data on a blockchain or a DAG like Constellation? So those are really valuable, and I see them as compatible. And I think that what we're going to find is that there are going to be many standards that people use in this space, in data and this new digital economy that we've created, and we'll be able to use different chains for different use cases. We are not a good use case for supply chain management. You don't need high throughput for that. You don't need a fire hose of data going into a blockchain and being able to have an audit trail. Now, for a LiDAR on top of an autonomous vehicle, you probably want an audit trail of all the data that's existing in case it hits somebody, and then you've got an accident and you have to understand, was it cleaned? Was it not? Did the program do something wrong? Was there a user error? And so I think there's a lot of that. And then, as I always like to say, is we are compatible with centralized data management systems. You could also see that as a competitor, right? Centralized data management systems like MongoDB, Databricks, Cloudera are all doing things with big data right now. And they have a very good value proposition and have been in the space for roughly 8 to 10 years. And we want to evolve that. We don't want to be a competitor. We just want to evolve that. We want to add security to data management. So I'll take a pause there. That was a lot there as
that was
well.
great. So I'll give you a little bit more of a softball for this one. What are your favorite companies that are not specifically in your space, but more generally either sort of blockchain or crypto focused companies that you think are doing a really great job and that you sort of follow along with?
Diggles, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I've got a couple of favorites out there. I mean, one last thing I'll say on the competitive side, which I think kind of plays into this favorites piece, is that everybody's really collaborative right now. I think people compare us a lot to other directed acyclic graph or DAG projects like IOTA and Phantom, and we have open lines of communication with pretty much most of the DAG projects out there. It's like people holding up two sticks and saying, which one's better to build with? The question is, what are you building? And since we're focused on big data, we're kind of in our own little camp, if you will. So I think there's collaboration and opportunity with many of people that might be considered competitors. As far as projects that I think are really cool, I've been really impressed with Morpheus Network. I think that there's a big push for those to go after supply chain management. I'm glad that we're not in that space because I feel that's one of the more early adopting applications of blockchain. And so it's kind of a crowded space. And so there's those that I feel are doing better than others, and Morpheus Network is one of them. We also had recently talked to Simba Chain. Simba Chain is the only other company to ever secure a working contract with the DoD as a blockchain company. And they're making it really easy and demystifying a lot of the stuff around smart contracts to be able to deploy proof of concepts rather quickly. Because right now, the climate is, how do we get as close to value and prove the concepts as quickly as possible without having to deal with learning all about new protocols and consensus? Like, is there a there? And I feel like there's some of those platforms out there that are really around the deploying of these solutions. But I think that Simba Chain and their team is really focused in making it very simple. Those are two projects that I really appreciate. And Ben mentioned a couple of the other ones that we've been really focused on our partnerships, Chainlink, the Quant Network. I mean, it comes down to, in my opinion, what are the backgrounds of the leadership, the people that are running the company? Do they have a background in the industry in which they're trying to make an impact? Or are they just opportunistic people that are jumping in and see this as a money grab? Those that have deep roots, much like Quant Network, really having deep roots in finance, they're the ones that are really are positioned to succeed in that market versus those that maybe, I mean, and take no offense to the listeners, a couple of, Berkeley graduate students that came together on a project and wanted to create a company. I think that there's no lack of those types of projects out there, and I'm not discouraging those projects, but the ones that are really going to be implicating the big standards, handling the massive regulations in these industries that are completely void of the technology, those are the ones that are going to win, adding blockchain to the mix.
Yep, couldn't agree more. You can't just slap blockchain on a product and expect it to sell. And I saw a lot of that. So to sort of close us off, I know you guys have a hard stop in about 6 minutes, but I just wanted to ask, what big things do you guys have planned for 2020? Is there anything that our users should be looking out for? And then after that, maybe to finish off with just where they should go to learn more about you or get more involved.
Ben, I think that you're probably well poised to
So,
answer some of this since you've built such a great roadmap and strategy for the company. I mean, the only thing I want to add here is that we've coined a term datapreneur that I think deserves its own, podcast in itself, which really is less around what can our users do for our network and more what can our network do for our users, unlocking a new economy of people using data in interesting ways to create new business for themselves and the market. But Ben, maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the stuff on our roadmap that you're excited about.
yeah, I mean, I go back to the beginning of what we talked about. What is your data strategy? Whether you're a person or you're a company, where does your data go? Are you aware of it? We've entered a world where we are now starting to question all the freemium apps that we download and the terms and services that we freely give up our rights for some engagement, for something to entertain us. But it's not quite enough. This is why you have Instagram celebrities that are paid by sponsors, because it's not enough to just be on Instagram. So there's another monetization layer going on in this world, and it's making us rethink how do we monetize ourselves and who has access to our data? And these are all really, really great questions. So over the course of the next year, I see us kind of breaking into a multi-pronged approach. And the first is working with the public sector, which is really driving innovation in the sense of mission critical events. So protecting civilian safety and using this technology to add cybersecurity to protect information in a multitude of ways. The second major way is working with our network. One of the visions that I have is, as I mentioned, is around owning our data and creating an infrastructure that allows the accounting for individuals to own data in a decentralized capacity, which is the only way that I actually see possible going forward. And so with that, and to what Benjamin was saying, is this idea around the datapreneur. How can we gamify individuals and node operators and network and community to partake in a global economy of data? And what new businesses and applications can you do that takes validated data to create a wave of future businesses? And what I mean by that is we can start to connect different ecosystems. And one ecosystem is looking at the end user. People that purchase products could go online and register themselves and the product they purchased through a cryptocurrency wallet like the Molly wallet, Constellation's wallet. And we can do much more with the cryptocurrency wallet and start to bring that to the forefront and into the consumer's hands by registering their information and giving them private and public keys that lock their data and allow individuals to decide and ascertain who gets that data. With a switch of a button, they can say if Procter and Gamble gets their data or Nike gets their data, and they can turn it off. So this idea of data ownership and data security are going to start to be merged within the Constellation community. And this is a very big idea and a very big vision that requires a complete different mindset shift. As Benjamin said, the datapreneur. What can we do with our data? Who's collecting it? Who's selling it? And how do I have control over it? The first wave we saw around the gig economy and Uber unlocking the abundance of cars that sit in garages and people's free time became just an application that allowed that connectivity to exist. But now we're at a new layer around where our data goes. How can we monetize that and keep control over that? Where can we take this abundance of information and monetize it to our ability and have it self-serving as well? So I think we're going. So our a lot of our vision for 2020 is to kind of see these worlds come together and create not only a new technology but a complete perspective shift.
Well, that was beautifully put. So thank you guys both so much for being here. I know our users really appreciate, or our listeners really appreciate it. I'm too much on my app train here. If you guys had any anywhere you would like them to sort of go to learn more, feel free to plug those now.
Yeah, I would love it if, I'm very active in our Constellation community on Telegram. I dodge in there. You can see the heart and the soul of what will help Constellation scale. You'll also get real-time information on everything we are doing. So really that address, which is https://t.me, or just go to Telegram and look at Constellation community, and you'll see our vibrant community, and see our admins kind of understanding the technology, disseminating information, dissecting questions, and then see us very active in there.
And
Perfect.
constellationnetwork.io. So constellationnetwork.io, you can find on our resource section that link to Telegram as well as many other things. So, but I do love the community. I think that's also extremely important.
Yeah, I probably should
Great.
have said the
Thank you
website.
guys both so much. Yeah,
Thank
we'll
you
get
so
some of
much.
those links from you. Throw them in the description. Make sure they find it. Awesome.
Great.
Well, thank you guys, and
Thanks,
thank
Mark.
you guys for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode. Hey guys, I know I don't typically do sponsorships, but as a final note, I was hoping to encourage you guys to download my app, UBDI, on Google Play or the Apple App Store to start securely and privately monetizing your personal data. We allow you to aggregate your personal data in a data vault that only you have access to, that we cannot see, touch, or hold, until you decide to privately share insights with paying market researchers or other companies who are interested in studying your data once it's been aggregated with other members. So I'd love it if you guys would give it a shot. And thanks for listening.